Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. Hi guys, welcome back to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I'm Ryan here with my co-host Matt. This is episode 32. We're excited to have everybody back with us. And Matt, I'm excited to be with you, brother.
Absolutely, sir. It is a thrill every week to be able to get together and catch up and try and dig in a little bit on what's happening, but also have a topic of conversation. And it's going to be a good one this week. So I'm excited to be here and catch up. But go ahead and give me the update on your end, mate. I know that being a stay-at-home dad is a lot of work, but you've found the time to get yourself some nice new headphones there and a microphone. For those that aren't watching, you look like you're actually a professional, and I'm over here with hair flying around in the breeze. What's going on over there?
I know, I've got like a professional podcast set up here. I look like a professional podcaster thanks to, shout out to my dad and stepmom for the nice new microphone I got for my birthday. And shout out to Erica for the hand-me-down headphones. I got her some new headphones for her birthday, and so I got the hand-me-downs from her, and I'm just feeling official. Hopefully it comes through as a little bit better sound. I don't know if I've really noticed much of a difference so far, but at least I look the part on video.
Yeah, you do, mate. And I think I might have to break down and get myself even a pretend set from the dollar store just so I feel like I've got it dialed in. But it's been a crazy couple of weeks. We had a terrific guest last week with Chad, and I know that impacted a lot of people. I've had a few people up in the gym there talking about that and how impressive that was. So always great to have the guests, but it's always nice to, just the two of us catch up on a little bit of what's been going on. I mean, we're documenting this as a journey out of the hole. So give me the update on what's been going on with you, brother.
Pretty much status quo here, going day to day, week to week with Callan and, being the stay-at-home dad, and Erica's work schedule has lightened up a little bit, so she's been home a little bit more during the day and kind of home a little bit earlier in the evenings. So, I've had some relief there to where it's not just me one-on-one all the time, and so that's been good. We've got him in a new little routine over the last couple of weeks where we changed up kind of his sleep windows, wake windows, his feeding, kind of flipped to where he's getting bigger bottles and every 4 hours instead of 3 hours. So that little feeding window lengthened out a little bit, which I think eases things up a little bit, knowing he doesn't get a bottle every 3 hours. He's now on a kind of a 4-hour schedule with a bigger bottle, and he's still sleeping through the night. So we're blessed in that regard. I know everybody talks about like the sleep regression thing, so that might be coming. We'll kind of keep our fingers crossed and hope that he just keeps doing well during the night times.
Now, how are you holding up with the, what are we, 4 months in now? Being that man that's put aside his identity as a golfer and as a gym owner. How are you holding up?
Doing okay. Still think about, what's next for me in that regard. I think there's still something out there that I can get into at some point, and just still kind of searching for what that looks like and what that might be. We talked a little bit off air about it, and, finding that North Star was one of our episodes, a couple episodes back, and, figuring out what that's going to be and how that's going to look. And, everything's so up in the air with her work and her, where we're going to be in a year or two, or I guess more like 2 years, a year and a half, where we're going to be placed, and, with her residency coming to an end and figuring all that out, it's almost like we're kind of in a little bit of a limbo state, with this little process, and we got to figure out what's next and how that's going to look for us, where we're going to be living, if we're going to stay in Jacksonville, if we're going to, head down your way, if we're going to be in the middle of BFE, Texas, who knows, it's kind of up in the air.
Does that create a little bit of excitement, or is it a little bit of stress? Which way does it take you?
A little bit of both, just because I know how difficult it was to uproot out of Virginia and leave what we had going on there and that whole process. So we know it's going to be like that all over again, plus a baby in tow, I know you've had some experience moving with a baby, so you know how that goes, and so that adds another layer of complexity to the whole process. And yeah, we're gonna yeah, but at the same time, it's exciting because she's gonna have, solidify a career and get a fresh start at something that she's been working toward for the last, let's say 10, 11 years, really.
Yeah, that's a big deal, and congrats to her on being in that process and almost finished the race there. But I guess, as far as you're thinking of businesses or ideas, you're a man of action, and so it's hard to pull yourself into an area that you may not necessarily find yourself in. And, I can understand why there might be some hesitation there. And that void can create a little bit of extra opportunity for some of those negative thoughts to creep in and make you feel like, man, I'm not going to be doing anything for at least 18 months. Is that something that's been, challenging, but just in the back of your mind as you kind of think about, well, what would I do now? If this kid's a year or two old, I could probably start to do some things. Is that chewing away at you a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. I was looking on Facebook Marketplace the other day and just kind of scrolling through, and somebody had these like garage spaces listed, like these little, like 2,000 square foot, with one big garage door, and there were like units of them. And I saw them on there, and my mind immediately started thinking, man, I could put a gym in one of those things. I could throw, there's a couple grand a month rent, and I could throw some equipment in there, put up some TV screens, have a facility. And I went down this like long rabbit hole of thinking about this, and then I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. But my mind just like goes in that direction automatically. And I'm like, what is that even about?
It's funny because we've both done it, right? You did it on a bigger scale than mine, but 180 Fitness was, kind of what you're describing, not a garage door type situation, but about that sort of space. And your brain does just sort of run off onto a tangent of, well, what would it look like if I was to redo it, right? And we've both done it in the past. And so you almost feel like you want to have another crack at it to get, maybe some of the things changed over or, different. And so there is that level of excitement. I definitely went through that process as I was trying to consider my career options, and I think we documented a little bit of that, but obviously ended up back at Crunch, and they've been great all around the board, the mothership, all the way through to the management, the team, and everybody in the building. So it's worked out really nicely, but there is that thought of, well, I've been there and I've done it, so why wouldn't I just do it again? So I understand where your brain's at on
Yeah.
that, but it's funny. I was thinking about what you said, and to put you on the spot here, it's funny when I asked you on that text, what interests you, that North Star, as you were trying to wrestle back and forth with me a little bit on what would you do, right? And I look back at that chat and there was never a response, right? So there's definitely a void in what you really want to do. And maybe it's still coming. Maybe it's not meant to be there just yet, but it seems to me like you're looking, right? So that's the first step.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of figuring it out. It'd be nice to get back involved in the fitness world in some capacity at some point. I don't know if that means owning a gym or whatnot. Maybe it just means, you know, handling the finances and the back end of things while somebody else executes it. But you're kind of figuring out, or you're kind of living the proof of it. You can almost make more money working for a gym than you can being a gym owner, right? It's because how many clients are you up to now? You've kind of built your client base up at Crunch so fast, right?
Yeah, I think the tablet that I've got says 23 clients, which, for those that have been
Yeah,
out there training before, they know that that's a lot of personalities, a lot of needs, a lot of goals, and a lot of different management styles that you've got to kick into overdrive to really keep everybody on track, right? It's like a shepherd, and I think that's about where I want to be. I'm pretty good there. Like to build up a little bit more of my own thick skin on being back in. I mean, I'm only, what, 2 or 3 months in, not even 3 months. And so it's just a matter of getting my momentum back where I want it before I would even consider adding too many more, if you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah. That's a lot of floor hours that you're working, and but you're also making good money, and that's the thing that is kind of when you look at balancing that against owning your own facility and having all the expenses and overhead that goes along with that. It's just man, I look back at my time owning the gym, and it's just I just wasn't making a lot of money. I mean, I had a decent lifestyle, there were a lot of things the gym paid for and expenses like that, and then the free time and the freedom is something you have to factor in. But in terms of salary, I just wasn't making as much as I could make, like you're doing, working for a facility and getting a decent percentage of your split.
Yeah, definitely good things coming. I believe there's some changes that'll help that even more so moving forward. And so it's, been a real blessing to be back over there. And, what I think I've found is it's helped me get to a place where I'm working on all the things that I see myself being in the future, right? It's not that I'm not there now and I'm not able to help people now, but we've talked about this at length over the previous 31 episodes where I really want to have a bigger impact. I'd like to be able to speak to a larger audience, and it's almost as if I needed to go through this process to find the best version of myself, which we've talked a little bit about off air. Because I think quite often, we've talked about this as gym owners, we've talked about it as employees, we've talked about it as husbands, we've talked about it as dads, right? We're trying to find the best version of ourselves. And I think that with my carpentry career, 30 years serving me well, it wasn't necessarily going to take me to where I wanted to be 5, 10, 25 years from now. I've got this vision of myself as a 70-year-old, and I don't believe that I can get to where I see myself in that vision through the carpentry construction field. And so all of these things that have unfolded to bring me to this place of really making sure that I'm being the best version of myself. And as I've built up clients quickly and I've been blessed to have that volume so quick, I've really found myself almost being trained by my clients with their attitude of trying to get better. Like they've found me, they're paying me good money, which I don't take lightly, to be a better version of themselves. And they've trusted me with the reins, at least in the health and fitness portion of their life, to get them to be the best version of themselves that they could be in the gym. Now, we've talked a little bit about this off air, where you're in this space of not knowing what you want to do, who you want to be. You've been a golf pro, you've been a gym owner, now you're a stay-at-home dad, but there's still something missing. So you're doing a lot of work on the side right now, even in this state of treading water, where you're trying to figure out some things we touched on a couple of weeks ago about the Asperger's. Walk me through that, because today we're talking a little bit about being the best version of yourself, and you're putting in an enormous amount of effort behind the scenes while you try and figure out what's next for you.
Yeah, I've been reading a bit, and I've had a therapist that I've been seeing weekly, and she's kind of led me down this path a little bit and helped me explore some of the things we talked about a couple episodes ago with the Asperger's. And it's gotten to a point where she's, put her hands up a little bit and said, "Hey, this isn't quite my specialty. This isn't what I was trained in. And, I think you could be better served seeing someone who might have some more experience and specialize in this sort of thing." Talking about like a neurodivergent type of personality. And so that's kind of where she pointed me. And I went to, had a new session, or a session with a new therapist just last week, and, starting to work with her. And she's now pointing me in another direction toward, a psychologist who's going to help me, look further into this and kind of assess where I am and what he thinks, and actually provide some sort of diagnosis to, lend some more light, if you will, into the situation. And, I've had people ask me, like, what does that mean for you? And, for me, it just means having a little bit more peace of mind, and having, having the thought that, I know what's going on in my own head, versus in the past, it's come to, I don't know what's going on. Who is this person? What, I'm so frustrated. I have got so much pent up frustration and anger over who this person is, and I don't understand it. This is kind of a step toward understanding where I'm coming from, and kind of learning more about how my brain works, and that whole thing. So that's kind of That's kind of where I am on that. And it doesn't feel like I'm doing a lot, but I guess from the outside, putting forth the effort of making these appointments and keeping these appointments and working them into the schedule and going through the process is part of the battle for me.
It's exciting to hear that, and I think that ultimately what I like seeing in anybody and, being back in the gym and work with a lot of people is that you're putting the effort into getting answers or to get results. You're not just sitting around thinking, well, this is me. If you don't like it, tough. Or uh, you know, I'll just take more meds, or I'll just fall into this addiction, or I'll just make these choices. As Chad talked about last week, right? I'll just make these choices that are going to have negative impacts, and to hell with who it hurts or how it impacts those around me. This is who I am. This is how it's going to be. And if and anyone around me doesn't like it, or if the situation doesn't lend itself, then bugger it. I'll just dip out, or I'll be okay with anyone dipping out, right? And I think that as we try and build this community and help men, and I get to talk to more people in the gym setting or just in social, circles, I'm finding that we've got two trains of thought in this world, right? Where we've got this, well, this is who I am, so I'll just find people that understand me and I'll get rid of the rest versus no, let me see if I can work through this. Let me see if I can make these adjustments and these changes. And I think that what you're doing is lights out amazing because you've got a little fella at home that you've got to look after, and your missus is, trying to wrap up her career path there to embark on something even bigger as a springboard. And if you don't put the work in now, it's going to catch up with you to the point where we've talked about, Joe Dispenza talks about this, right? You become that person. You don't have to
Yeah.
be stuck where you are. And I know I always push you to, find goals and North Stars and things like that. But it's really encouraging to me to hear that you're, putting in these enormous strides to being the best version of yourself. And I don't think you've even scratched the surface on who that can be. So congrats, man. I think that's awesome that you're doing that. I think you're going to benefit those around you. I think you'll benefit and bless your family for doing so. You'll be a great husband. You'll be a great dad, regardless. But why not be best, right? Why not be the very top functioning version of Ryan Robertson that you can be? And you're doing that. And that's, to me, that's massive, man. So congrats on doing that. And, being willing to peel back those layers on the air here and tell everybody that this is what you're doing, this is what you're working on. I think that's really cool, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you. We're working on it, so we'll kind of keep folks up to date and see where we go from here. But yeah, it's seems like we're on the right track at least.
Yeah, I think that as gym owners and even people in management, we've had to hire people, right? They show up on day one and they give you their absolute best. They give you their top of the line speech. They show up in the right stuff. They're on time. They're dialed in. Everything's great. They say the right things. They give you the right answers. There's a big energy about them. And they're like, man, this is a good one right here. And, I even remember hiring someone and they started their onboarding, a week later or whatnot. And we got through the first half day of the onboarding and said, all right, guys, let's, there's a few people that were hired in this. And I remember one person didn't come back after lunch. And I'm like, what just happened here? How do we go from all these wonderful promises and visions and dreams and being a part of a team and getting on board something where you get to impact and change people's lives, and then you get halfway through the first day of onboarding and you don't even come back after lunch, right? Do you really think that they are being their best version of themselves in that moment? And I think a lot of people are just putting out these fake best versions of themselves, right, to the people that they live with or that they see or that they have to work with, right? And then behind the scenes, it's an absolutely different story. And so I think that it's important for us as men, as the, proverbial leaders of our homes, to be the best version of ourselves all the time. And when we find something within us or it's pointed out to us through repetition or through a kind word or through even a harsh word, the ability to say, right, that keeps coming up. I keep hearing that, or I keep getting told that, or I keep catching myself thinking that I'm not being the best version of myself. That's all great. I think a lot of people have those moments, but how many people are actually stopping in their tracks and saying, you know what? I am not the best version of myself. What do I need to do to become 2.0, 3.0, whatever it is, right? Reinvent yourself, right? Behaving your way to that new personality or that new habit or that new style of parenting or, as husbands, right? And you're doing that. So that's awesome. I can even throw in there the day we stand before, hundreds of people in front of God and a pastor, right? And we get up there and we speak our vows. We are literally promising the person in that moment, you're going to get the best version of me that I can possibly be. There'll be times where I'm not quite there. There'll be times where you're not quite there, but we're going to be there for each other all the way through. And I'm going to move the needle forward on any area that I'm not doing great at. But I'm going to commit to you that line, that list, that bucket of promises, vows, as we call them. And we're going to do it until one of us dies, right? It's like an employment contract where you don't get to go through day one and leave at lunch. You know what I mean? And I think we're just living in this society where whether you're a boss hiring someone or you've taken on a job or you just made vows to someone, right? We're just living in a society where there's no follow through on our promises. And I think I found myself really over the last month setting the bar on myself. I know I can be a much better version of myself. And I think that the best version of myself will attract like-minded people. I'll be surrounded in my home by that energy of being the very best you can be at all times, being humble enough to realize when you're not. Because what are we up to now? 60% failed marriages and careers that, last a week or two. And personally, it's really frustrating to watch it all unfold. Now, that doesn't mean I've got all the answers and I'm going to turn my marriage around into this wonderful, budding, romantic, long-term, till death, perfect picture we all see in the movies where you got two 90-year-olds holding hands at the end, right? I'm not able to promise that because it takes two people in the marriage scenario to be the best version of themselves. And I think in the employment space, it takes a boss to follow through on the promises he's made to someone that they've just hired, right? This is the work environment that I'm going to provide for you. This is the pay that I'm going to give you. These are the expectations that I have for you. If you do this, then I'll pay you that, right? And how often do people get into it and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for, right? We're living in this society where no one actually wants to follow through on anything they've said, promised, or done. And I think we need to stop and take a hard look at ourselves and say, right, where am I not being the very best version of myself that I could be?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the tagline for our gym when we first opened it. I remember in my email signature, it was something like helping you create the best version of yourself. That was kind of our gym. That was our whole deal as trainers, as gym owners, as bosses, as mentors. It was helping you create the best version of yourself. And I'll never forget, I walked into we were doing a competition at some gym in Virginia Beach area back in like 2014, 2015. And we walked into this gym and on the wall, it had this big quote written on the wall and it said, the definition of hell. Have you ever heard this? The definition of hell is the day you die, you get to meet the person you could have become. So the man you are when you die gets to come face to face with the person who you could have become. Wow. And that's the definition of hell. That quote has always stuck by me. It's like, man, that's because you could be strangers is the whole point. You could not even recognize that other person of who you could have become at the end of your days. Or you can strive day in and day out and month in and month out, year in and year out to try to close that gap and become one with the person that you're meant to become. So it's definitely a solid reminder. And I think where I'm struggling right now is I don't have a lot of things pushing me in that direction like I used to. Even you right now, you've got 23 people that are kind of forcing you to grow and forcing you to become that better version of yourself. And of course, I've got my family, and now I've got some folks on my side with the counseling and things like that. But it is nice day in and day out, like when I was owning the gym, to be able to have a staff and have, 50, 75, 100 people counting on me to be a better version of myself. I couldn't afford to have a bad day or slack off because I've got an employee who needs to eat, who needs to pay their rent and, needs to make ends meet. And so I've got to grow for them. And, I think you're kind of in that boat right now, right? Where you've got 23 people who are trying to create a better version of themselves and they need your best day in and day out.
Yeah, I'm still processing everything you just said there about the hell is meeting the best version of yourself, and is there a gap between who you were at the end and that person? And I
Yeah.
was just kind of lost in space there for a second, just processing, am I going to shake the hand of this, 70-year-old? I've got this picture of me sitting on a porch overlooking my property, that my porch is my office, right? And I've got this history behind me at that age where I've written books and I've spoken internationally, and I've got a retreat where people are coming to get help and to become better versions of themselves. And I'm picturing this moment, even as you describe this, am I going to meet that version, or am I going to keep falling back into these old ways of negativity and woe is me and I'm broken, or I can't be this, or I can't get that? And I'm really just processing that. I got chills the minute you said it. I've never heard that before. That's actually fascinating, because what I said right before you went into that, we haven't spoken about. I did not know that that was your motto at the gym and that was part of your email sign off. I did not know that. And so for you
Yeah.
to bring all that up and then you be able to sort of tie in, hey, this is what I did. I think it speaks to the divine creator always putting us in these situations where we're talking about something that we may not have realized needed to be talked about, and bam, here it comes. So I'm going to need a moment to process, who am I going to meet on the other side of the end of my days. And I think that's what sometimes drives me to try and, get this marriage back on track. And, that's not something that we talk about lightly, right? I have openly said that the last couple of years has been very, very challenging. I think there's been a lot of expectations not met from both sides, and I'm speaking for my marriage, not yours. But I think that there's this void where, as a gym owner, I would hire people that didn't follow through, or as when I was in management with Crunch in California, and even out here, right? There were those times where the expectation was set, promises are made and fallen through. But when it comes to marriage, there seems to be a real lack of follow through. And I will speak of myself that over the course of those years becoming a dad, I did not understand who I was, who I was trying to be. I definitely didn't handle a lot of the things that were happening around me, which we've talked about, right? Family living with us and just creating a lot of extra stress and dynamics that I didn't probably handle well. But over the course of the last 7, 8 months through this process, I'm finding more out about myself because I'm putting the work in. And it's funny that this all started to happen because about, 13, 14 months ago, well in advance of my bicep tearing, I was putting the time in. And so when the bicep tore, it was like, something's shifted, something's changed. This is going to help me become the better version of myself. But at that moment, it also helped me hit rock bottom on my marriage, my finances, and then physically, right? So I'm in this process where I'm trying to figure out, how do I rebuild myself? And as a fitness professional, I know the steps that it takes physically, and it's going to take a lot of patience, and I'm not there yet. Still, battling all the scar tissue, and hand is swollen every morning and it hurts to just go and mow the lawn, right? But I'm working on it. And then on the financial side, I've gone back into the gym and I've built up my clientele, and I'm, got that paycheck coming in and some opportunities coming up that'll help that as well. And then I look at the marriage and I'm like, man, what am I doing to move that needle forward? Right? And it's that one thing, and I hope that we get a specialist on here. Maybe, I'll be praying for that. But there's that one thing where I've just described all the things that I could fix, right? I was able to take those reins on, go get a job, get yourself back in shape. Yes, I can be a better husband, but I can't do both sides of it. And I think for me, that's the biggest challenge that I watch unfold in most people's battles, right? As we've tried to help a lot of people out there struggling through tough times, it always comes down to the relationships that seem to just float their way to the top of the conversation, the things people are struggling with. And so I've got a real driving force pushing me to understand that more. And hopefully someone hears this that can, lead us to a great guest or a great therapist or someone that can really help me understand. This is a fork in the road in my life where I get to say, hey, do I come back after lunch, right? Or do you peace out? Now, I'm not saying that in the marriage sense because I've got two wonderful kids and I see a vision of things that could be much, much better here. But there is so much negativity in the world of quitting, bailing, not putting in the work that it is a huge challenge that I hear on a daily basis from everybody around me, men and women alike. Oh, bugger it, I'll just quit. And I think that it's so important to have that community pushing you towards being the best version of yourself at all times, but also putting in the work to being humble enough to receive counsel, to want to improve something. And that means that I've got to be willing to learn things as a trainer. I've got to be willing to learn things from a brand new kid that's 20 years old and wants to help me be a better trainer. It's got to be something that I put the huge amount of effort into getting financial specialists involved to help rebuild what I want to have long term. And then, of course, having, like you've done, right, someone in your corner to help you through the marriage, which I believe you and Erica are doing, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of all part of the puzzle and it's tough because you do have to kind of put your pride aside, and say, hey, I can't really do it alone. I'm struggling. I've got these issues going on and I'm not going to be able to dig out of it alone. And as much as it kind of hurts the pride, it's like, hey, I need some help. I need, just like they hire a fitness professional to train, you hire someone in those areas, like you're saying, to help with the finances or help with the marriage. And you got to lean on people for sure.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine that's had parenting counseling for quite a while, and they swear by it. And they've actually given me some things that they've learnt, and it's been wow, kind of a moment where, man, that's brilliant. I
Mm,
think we just so often want to quit on everything around us or ignore it or just hope it'll get itself better. And when in all reality, you really do need a fleet of people around you, right? And that's the community. And I'm really driven towards trying to grow this and maybe grow something local or grow something that's virtual for people. But you've got to surround yourself with the right people, which I think was it Chad last week? He was talking a little bit about that, or the guest applied
yeah.
to that.
Sleeping with dogs and getting fleas.
That's right. It was such a great phrase, and I really remembered the concept. I didn't remember the phrase, but I remember the concept of it. And it's been hitting home this week. And you've inspired me a little bit with what you guys are doing. And, being able to get on air and say, hey, yeah, we've got someone that we see for the marriage side. I've got someone I'm seeing for my own personal journey side. I think that's huge, man. I mean, absolutely huge. And as the little fella gets older, you more than likely, based on what I'm hearing, you'll probably have someone that can help you understand about being a better dad too.
Yeah, yeah. It's part of the process. Like you said, you got to have a team around you, and so that's a big piece of it.
Yep, I think it's the only piece of it, man. So really, as we wrap this week up, I'm hoping that the right people will come into my life to help get me through the areas that I need help with to being the best version of myself. And of course, I'm going to keep you accountable to what you've just said about making sure that you've got some level of accountability on maybe the health and fitness side where you know you need it, but maybe you haven't found it or you're not willing to put it in. So I think we've both got some work to do on each other's side there. That I'm doing it in the gym because I work there. Maybe you're missing out on that a little bit. And of course, you're doing the work on the therapy side, which I can make a bigger effort to find the right people to help that not be such a burden, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thanks for the inspiration, brother. As always, I always come away with this from something someone said, or did I completely get that backwards? Something someone said? Sounds about right.
yeah,
Still thinking about meeting myself at hell. So sorry for the last
yeah,
15 minutes. I'm really stuck on that point, making sure I don't actually butcher this opportunity I've got. And thanks to all the supporters and love out there, people that are coming up to me in the gym saying, man, I've heard your podcast. I've, been tracking it. I didn't realize that was you. And giving me some good feedback. It's been great. A couple of people that have asked, could there be a guest on the show, right? I mean, things are happening. I just need to open myself up to, how to grow this thing and help people. And I think that I've got to learn a lot more about how to be the best version of myself as a husband, as a father, as a trainer, as a friend, and being willing to think that there's a lot of experts out there that can help me get there. So thanks for being a part of that realization today, my friend. And I fully expect something big to happen in the next couple of weeks that'll help move that needle forward for me.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, like, subscribe, share it with a friend, and let's grow this thing together as we keep on moving forward.
Thanks, guys. Stay strong. Cheers.
See ya.